evening, dear viewers, and welcome to the News Bulletin at 8, brought to you by our number one news provider, Eswatini TV. I am Nondumiso Vilagata alongside Zamanzi Manze, and here are your top stories. His Majesty King Mswati III has arrived in Singapore. The Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini condemns the killing of state security and labels such as acts of terrorism. The Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs says about 50% of Mswati are keen on legal aid assistance and about 40% are keen on legal counseling. The news. His Majesty King Mswati III has embarked on the second leg of his two-nation trip. The King arrived in the Republic of Singapore to officially begin a working visit on Monday. His Majesty the King is accompanied by Nkosikazi Magalafokiane.
His Majesty the King's working visit to the Republic of Singapore is set to expand and deepen bilateral relations between the two nations in various areas of cooperation. His Majesty's arrival at Changi International Airport, marking the start of the visit, which also presents the two nations with an opportunity to tap into each other's potentials in order to accelerate trade and investment relations. His Majesty is accompanied by Nkosikazi Magalafokiane in his two-nation working trip, which started with a Commonwealth meeting in Rwanda. With the COVID-19 pandemic having a huge impact on the global economy, developing nations like the Kingdom of Eswatini have been hit hardest, and His Majesty the King has had to respond to the crisis by engaging leaders from developed nations like Singapore in an effort to cultivate economic opportunities for the kingdom. His Majesty's visit in Singapore coming at a time when the kingdom needs the support of its development partners in order to accelerate its post-COVID-19 economic recovery ambitions in line with the post-COVID economic recovery plan that was launched in July 2020. On the news, I'm Sandile Makanya reporting in Singapore.
You're welcome.
Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini has passed his condolences to all families who have lost their loved ones in the ongoing killings of state security officers. The Premier has also condemned the killing of state security officers as well as the sporadic arson and has labeled these as acts of terrorism. The Premier says these attacks come at a time when the country has a clear laid-down pathway towards reconciliation.
The safety of Mswati across all four regions is now under threat as this group of criminals continues to wage a senseless assault on our people. This spate of crime and its effects has now reached a level in which it has and will affect the lives of all Mswati in one way or another. No doubt, it is not through consent of Mswati. It is therefore begs the question, who is it for and what does that person or persons stand to benefit from it? It is clear, therefore, that these attacks are not just on government or any individual company, but on all Mswati. Those behind these evil acts are terrorists hell-bent on condemning our people to a state of fear, never-ending cycle of poverty. As a government, we cannot sit back and watch these terrorists intimidate Mswati. We will do everything to protect the lives of Mswati and to restore peace and order in our beautiful kingdom. These criminals and their enablers will face the full might of the law. We are already out in full force, conducting investigations and gathering the necessary information that will help us decisively deal with these criminals behind these acts. I should also take this moment to thank our security personnel and all Mswati who have worked bravely and tirelessly to protect our people and our country from these cruel individuals. My condolences to all the families that have lost loved ones. We also sympathize with those whose properties and livelihoods have been negatively affected. I wish to urge all Mswati to embrace the call to protect their country and their livelihoods. All peace-loving Mswati should stay clear of activities that have the potential to escalate into conflict. We should rather channel our energy towards reconciliation and restoring peace. Our collective efforts as a nation should be towards nation building in the form of preparing for the upcoming Sibaya National Dialogue, which His Majesty King Mswati III and the government openly committed to having. The current violence, threats, and intimidation against Mswati, however, undermine government's efforts in preparing for the national dialogue. We can do better as a nation. Government is attending to the many issues that our people have asked us to deal with. Most of these are socio-economic in nature and border on job creation and service delivery. And government is already addressing those through upscaling our service delivery efforts and creating employment opportunities. Government will not hesitate to respond with the necessary force to protect our national security as a sovereign state in the face of these brutal crimes that are being committed under the pretext of pursuing democracy. The government commits to every citizen that it is deploying all its assets internally as well as regionally to hunt down these terrorists and bring them to book while exposing their enablers.
About 50% of Mswati are keen on legal aid assistance and about 40% are keen on legal counseling. This was said by the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Lindiwe Mbingo, during the launch of the Legal Aid Baseline Assessment Report.
On the 17th of March 2022, the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, with the assistance of the American Bar Association and Women and Girls Empowered Organization, conducts a survey which will inform Mswati about their policies and legal aid bill. The Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Justice, Lindiwe Mbingo, says Mswati has shown great enthusiasm towards the bill.
The American Bar Association and Rule of Law Initiative and the Women and Girls Empowered Organization to conduct a survey, which survey would inform the outcomes of this survey are going to inform our policies and the legal aid bill. We are now at the final stages of dusting the bill and taking it to our stakeholders.
The Deputy Chairperson in the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs Portfolio Committee, Markford Sibanze, says the Parliament supports such programs which aims to improve the livelihoods of Mswati.
So many people have suffered due to exorbitant fees in legal, and you find that their human rights are infringed, and in fact it ends up being one of the causes of gender-based violence, and it affects quite a number of dynamics, social dynamics. So if this issue of cost is being funded by the state, I think it's a quick win, like I've said, to the country.
The Republic of South Africa is one of the countries which has the legal aid in the SADC region. Reporting for Eswatini News, I'm Makakula Nomfundo with Nonjabulo Makakula and Smova Shongwe Mbabane.
The Director for Veterinary Services in the Ministry of Agriculture, Dr. Xolani Dlamini, says the scarcity of cattle for feedlot project is caused by farmers' failure to take care of their cattle. Dlamini says most of the calves in the country do not make it due to preventable diseases.
Following the concerns by feedlot farmers in Eswatini about the inavailability of cattle for feedlot projects, the Ministry of Agriculture, through the Veterinary Service, has urged farmers to ensure that they closely monitor their cattle, especially calves. According to the Director for Veterinary Service, Dr. Xolani Dlamini, the ministry is working on introducing artificial insemination to try and bring about a solution. Dlamini says Mswati can keep in touch with extension officers in different Tinkhundla centers.
Tinto lesisitibonile ke dinengana tona yokucala kumbe laba farmers ethu noma ke balimi abavamse bafuyile abavamse ukukhala ngakho kwekuthi kumbe tinkunzi tethu setifisha noma luhlobo alusasilolo likahle tsineke kahulumende siyalubolekisa luhlobo lwetinkomo letethu tesintu sesinguni lesihle singuni phinze njalo naleti teboma Brahmani ne Madrankensberg setbolekisa letinkunzi kusite Mswati usiphakama letinye siyatitsengisa.
Nomusa Smelane, the chairperson of Mvundlela feedlot situated in Begelweni, courtesy of the Regional Development Fund, says their main challenge is the issue of transport. Smelane says the scarcity of the cattle costs them as they are forced to travel long distances.
I-challenge lesinayo i-transport. Lokunye i-challenge kuthola tona letinkomo. Sesiye sibuke aba-advertiser khona. Noma siye emadibhini lapho kuthiwa kubhithelwa khona tinkomo.
The Kingdom of Eswatini, through trade agreements with European Union and Taiwan and other markets, allow farmers to sell unlimited tonnage of beef. Currently, the beef that is consumed locally is from local farmers. For Eswatini TV News on Domlangeni with Mswati III.
In a bid to ensure that SMEs are ready for financial assistance, the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade met entrepreneurs to capacitate them on entrepreneurship development. According to the Acting Director for SMEs, Bonkosi Mavuso, SMEs play a huge role in sustaining livelihoods. Mavuso was speaking during the meeting held in Manzini.
The Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade, in collaboration with United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, held the capacity building meeting on entrepreneurship development for micro, small and medium enterprises in Eswatini. This meeting comes as a result of recommendations of the SMEs policy, which pointed out that SMEs in Eswatini do not have the right information when it comes to being financially assisted by financial institutions. According to the Acting Director for SMEs, Sibonginkosi Mavuso, says SMEs will be capacitated on the processes of a company registration, regulatory and quality infrastructure development, intellectual property, and processes of securing a license.
Si-implementa nakulokuthiwa i-SME financing model lesayidevelopa nga-2019 ema-recommendations ale model avetala ukuthi bosomabhizinisi they are not finance ready, so badzinga kucapacitatwa. So namuhla-ke sikhona sito-capacitate bosomabhizinisi ukuthi babe finance ready.
Wandile Zishwili, representing SMEs, says SMEs lack the right information and also the issue of securing market is also a challenge.
The biggest challenge that we are faced with as entrepreneurs or business people on the ground is because we still need to absorb the culture, which is the entrepreneurship culture. So such platforms that mobilize young people to be together to absorb the culture is very helpful, which is what we appreciate from the government of Eswatini. And then some of the reasons is the capacity that young people have. They do not have the exact information that they need for their businesses. For example, where to access markets, where actually to sell their services, or are they lucrative for that market demand in that particular time? So we find ourselves doing a lot of things that we probably need, they are not necessary for that market.
The ministry also celebrated the SME Day on Monday. Mavuso says there are a number of programs that government has put in place to assist SMEs who suffered due to COVID-19. Mavuso says the 50 million Emalangeni Relief Fund is among other initiatives. For Eswatini TV News on Domlangeni with Mswati in Manzini.
Siposhongwe's murder case has resumed in court. The Crown led a new witness, Anthony Mashabane, who is the head of the Barberton Correctional Center. The witness has told the court that Shongwe was a member of the Islamic faith in prison. However, the accused says he did not follow the practices of the religion.
The maximum prison head, Anthony Mashabane was in the High Court giving testimony linking Sipho Shongwe and South African alleged gang leader Farouk Meyer. Meyer's name is not new to the case, as testimony given earlier during the trial was to the effect that Shongwe and his co-accused persons, Mbuso Ngazankosi, Simpiwe Tata Ngubane, and Sicelo Tsotso Zigalala Lutango, met at Meyer's guest house in Eldorado Park to hatch a plan to kill Victor Kametse. Mashabane told the court that Shongwe and Meyer were both in prison for crimes including murder. However, they did not commit them together. He told the court that the two were both in Pretoria Maximum Prison between 2001 and 2004. Mashabane told the court that Shongwe and Meyer followed the Islamic faith. He also told the court that Muslim prisoners have a month for prayer and fasting yearly, where they stay in one cell. Mashabane submitted to the court that there is no doubt that Shongwe and Meyer interacted during the month of Ramadan. The witness also submitted that Shongwe and Meyer were once taken to hospital together in the same transport and clearly had time to talk. Defense Senior Counsel Advocate Lawrence Holders asked the witness whether his testimony was based on what he saw or correctional records. Mashabane told the court that the testimony was based on records and his experience as a head of a correctional center. Hodes submitted to the court that he had been instructed that in as much as records show that Shongwe was a Muslim, he did not follow practices of the religion as he was a member of the ZCC. He added that he had been instructed that Shongwe only registered as a Muslim because he did not want to eat pork in prison. Shongwe further disputed that he interacted with other inmates in prison as he was kept in solitary confinement during his whole stay there. Mashabane disputed this. At the time of compiling this report, the matter had adjourned for an hour and was expected to resume before Judge Nkosinathi Masego. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela with Vuminkosi Nzinisa, High Court.
The head of communications for Nature, Sipho Ngwanyana, says the self-test kits proved to be much more efficient during last year's lockdown when people were not able to physically go for HIV checkups in hospitals.
About 210,000 Mswati live with HIV. Also, about 70,000 HIV-positive Mswati are not taking treatment. The head of communications at Nature, Sipho Ngwanyana, says the high numbers of HIV-positive people not taking any treatment poses a great challenge for the government in the fight against HIV. Ngwanyana says their target for the year 2023 is that HIV-related deaths and infections decrease by at least 90%.
There has been so much technological advancement as well to go with the times, such as the introduction of self-test kits, which we found was a very good initiative, which has also assisted us during the COVID-19 pandemic, where government came with regulations about traveling. There were lockdowns. There was no gathering of large people in big numbers in one setup. So we found that HIV service delivery was also impacted during that period. So self-test kits have come in handy because, the general population can pick these up at health facilities and then they go test themselves in their own privacy.
Ngwanyana further says a report by the Ministry of Health reflects that there were 10,000 new HIV cases in the previous year, which most of the infected people are under treatment. For Eswatini TV News, I'm Thandukuhle Mdluli with Smuva Shongwe, Ezulwini.
Dear viewers, now take a look at our financial updates.
Bank, it can be.
Welcome back. You're still watching Eswatini TV, and for your sports news tonight, former Slango Semnigate star Dennis Yuki Masina says the Kingdom of Eswatini should start taking football serious in order to excel at an international stage. Masina believes that the current performance and standard of the national team is a true reflection of not getting enough assistance.
Former Slango Semnigate star Dennis Yuki Masina says the Kingdom of Eswatini should start taking football serious in order to excel at international stage. Masina believes the current performance and standard of Sihlangu is a true reflection of not getting enough assistance. Masina says players and coaches are not to be blamed for Sihlangu poor performance.
We players. The performance of the team but it's not good. We need to have more players because now if Swaziland, we've got few players that are outside of the country, and which is in the wrong. We have a lot of players that are kaya, but they are not exposed to the outside world, which is not even South Africa, overseas. It drag back the country, which is we'll blame the coach, but we must blame even our own players because of us as players. It's be serious about football. It's not about the coach, it's not about the management, it's not about what. It's us as players. What do we do? And us as soccer ex-players, what do we do to motivate the young players? How can you go the way last hamba kona?
Masina concluded wishing Sihlangu all the best in the upcoming COSAFA Cup tournament to be staged in the Republic of South Africa in Durban next month. He says in the near future, he wishes to contribute in the development of local football. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Msonera, Babane.
The Manzini Regional Football Association has unveiled a chief executive officer of the association. As per the rules and regulations by FIFA, that all regional football associations should also have a chief executive officer. The unveiling of the chief executive officer was held at the association's offices in Manzini.
One way of following all the terms and conditions that are required by FIFA, the Manzini Regional Football Association has unveiled a chief executive officer of the association.
The
association's chairman, Johannes Boza, says the new chief executive officer by the name of Smiso Kumalo will be prioritizing issues of marketing and sponsorships for the growth of Manzini Regional football.
Football Association.
Smiso Kumaro, the appointed chief executive officer, says he will work tirelessly and to ensure that there is improvement in the Manzini regional football. He says he has love for football as he does play it for social reasons. On another note, the regional association also unveiled Museum Tsetwa as the association's office clerk and competitions officer. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Msonera, Manzini.
That is all we had for tonight, but before we wrap up, we'll take a recap of today's headlines. His Majesty King Mswati III has arrived in Singapore. The Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini condemns the killing of state security and labels such as acts of terrorism. The Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs says about 50% of Mswati are keen on legal aid assistance and about 40% are keen on legal counseling. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin tonight. Up next is the weather forecast for selected towns. Good night, Eswatini.